Hi there, Lela Witherspoon here for my midterm. My artwork is centered around this idea of a timeline of my parents' life and mine, and how these things kind of interweave together. So my rough draft for my artist statement is: my mother recently passed away, and in this body of work, I explore the lives of both her and my late father and how our stories wove together. In these works, I focus on both the hardships and crippling disability that defined their last years, but also the deep and unyielding love we had for one another. This timeline of our lives is meant to end in highlighting the deep sense of isolation I now feel as an only child grieving her parents. The visual themes within these works center around light and shadows. I use the softness of oil pastels to create a glowing light that threads through the work, giving a sense of the soul. The counter to that is the shadows, the darkness and grief that is an inescapable part of our life. Together, these elements illustrate the truth of our lives filled with joy and pain, the good and the bad, bound together in love. So we start with A Letter to Nowhere. It was a kind of gut reaction. I have to make this moment where I realized this was something I wanted to say. And it had kind of been an idea I had been percolating around, where like this sense of I want to communicate and I can't. And so that became a letter. And I realized as I was finishing this up and titling it, A Letter to Nowhere is quite negative. Well, not just nowhere, like it's a very kind of atheistic view of the world. And so I added or somewhere, to kind of open it up to whatever people might perceive. So, generational trauma, just the idea of like my father grew up in a fairly emotionally abusive household, and wanting to kind of, I don't know, talk about that, process it. He did a really amazing job of kind of trying to talk about it and block it from me. He was a psychiatric nurse, so try not to put that on my shoulders. Um, and so this was like, I kind of got it out. I went for it, and I brewed on this one for a couple of days, and I posted this to the work in progress forum. And there was some things that I wasn't loving. This is by far the most textural piece I had made up until this point. Texture is really not my jam. I'm all about smoothness. And so, but I sat with it and I moved on and I came back to it. And there was a line that I wanted to fix, which I did. And I was like, I just, it's not, I'm not in love with this. Let's go farther. Let's take it another level. And I think I did, with something like oil pastels, where you can't really get too impasto with it, but like, I did kind of do my best to kind of pull in some more texture. And so like the forms themselves, um are kind of bleeding into each other, even the lighter ones. um I I wish I'd kind of done the values, and like I don't love this idea that like my family is this pristine thing down at the bottom, because we're not. But it's kind of how it manifested, and I did feel better once I kind of blended the family above into that lighter one below. But this is, he was never told he was loved. And I'm okay with it. This is one referencing my father's pain. My father had a degenerative form of arthritis in his lower back, and lived with crippling pain for a long, long time. And so this was me trying to communicate such a big part of my life. Um, and I've made my husband pose and like took like 100 photos, and I'm pretty happy. This is the one I'm the happiest with out of all of the ones that I've made so far. Um, so, and then this was like, I was trying to, once I kind of got this sense of energy to it and realized I wanted it reflected on his back, because at that point I hadn't made that choice and that reflection. I was pretty happy with it. The olive green is probably my least favorite part of this, because it was just meant to be like, this is blue form, but the green is like the mixture of like that warm light onto his back, affecting things, changing it. But currently it's called Unimaginable and Insurmountable. I think I don't really love that title, but it's supposed to, I don't know, kind of reference his never ending pain, which is a heavy thing. So I haven't really figured out how I want to talk about that one. And speaking of heaviness, abstraction of death. Like, how do you represent something as monumental as death and as nebulous and as it was just kind of like, okay, like I don't know how I was going to deal with this, and I had different abstract ideas. I landed on this one. I This is probably my least favorite out of all of the four that I've made so far, and I'm sitting with it, and I intend to. This is definitely then a work in progress because I do not intend to leave it like this in its final form. But here's some process photos. At this point, you can see it, especially on the one on the right. Like things are kind of sharp, and I blend the crud out of it, and I kind of wish I hadn't, but I really over blended it. And trying to title a piece about death, I settled on my favorite Frida Kahlo quote, which is, "I hope the exit is joyful, and I hope never to return." So this one I will definitely be altering or potentially redoing if I can somehow manage to find the time, even though I have 5 more pieces to create. I don't know. But I created these like dots that kind of wove through it. It's really hard to see in the full photo. Um, but that kind of I in person it works a little bit better. It makes it feel kind of like a sparkle almost, but not really. So right now the 9 square grid these will be the positions where these will be in. At this point, I might think about like switching it to like 8, or I could do 6. I'm not saying I'm gonna do the 9, but if I choose to kind of leave 1 or 2 out, I have the option of playing with what that final grid might look like. But these are the 4 in this form. Anyway, thank you so much.